Let me talk to attorney Ted Spaulding. Ted, good to see you again. We might be interrupted by that press conference if it gets underway, and we want to take that signal. So investigators say they're not trying to assign blame, to what happened. But in your view, is there a civil or criminal case that is building against Oceangate?
Yes. I mean, I think there certainly is a civil case. And I would be shocked if one or more families do not pursue, and it's called a wrongful death case. So it's a personal injury case. So I would not be surprised if that gets filed. Criminal-wise, certainly from some of the narratives that I hear out there, there are some components that if it keeps going that way, there might be a criminal investigation.
Meaning if an Oceangate or people within that operation knew that this was a greater risk than usual was being posed by carrying on with this mission?
That is correct, yeah. This all comes down, and so does the civil side, quite frankly, comes down to how much knowledge do they have in advance. How much risk did they take and they knew they were taking in the design of this submersible. The more they knew, and we've heard about this the past couple of days with the CEO who was on the submersible, when he was coming up with this idea and creating this submersible, all of the things he was doing and how innovative this was and all of these different things. And the question becomes, how much of this did he know in advance?
So let's zero in a little bit more on the risk, because everyone on the surface knew that there's great risk with wanting to be part of this venture. And quite frankly, that's also part of the lure, for people who are, explorers who want to be a part of, these incredible ventures. And correspondent and tech journalist for CBS Sunday Morning, David Pogue, actually rode on the Titan submersible. He joined us on our air earlier in the week. About a year ago, he shared with us some of the waiver, or he was on the vessel about a year ago, and he shared with us a portion of the waiver that he signed at the time, which he said states this: this operation will be conducted inside an experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and may be constructed of materials that have not been widely used in human-occupied submersibles. Travel in and around the vessel could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. The support vessel could expose me to property damage, injury, disability, or death. Assisting in the operation of the sub could lead to property injury, disability, or death. So, if the language here is similar to that of the waiver that these latest passengers may have signed, does this insulate, protect Oceangate at all?
It potentially does. In the personal injury realm, we're very used to waivers, okay? They come up all the time. So this is not abnormal to have a waiver like this.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're talking a unique situation, so it's a little bit different than what most injury attorneys have to deal with. But this will be hotly litigated if a case is filed, because obviously Oceangate's going to say, look, it's right here in plain English. They're waiving any of this. It's not that simple, okay? Now, we don't know what jurisdiction we're talking about yet. That's going to be another problem. There's
Washington State involved with this, venture, this company. They're Bahamas because of the way it, the LLC held its money. And then, of course, we're talking about the ocean, where this happened.
Correct. So there's multiple jurisdictions that are potentially in play here. So depending on the jurisdiction, what we're dealing with is things like gross negligence. That is a way that a waiver like this can be found to be void. Okay, if Oceangate acted with gross negligence in whatever the claim is. Obviously, we know they're heading down the path of negligent design. Okay, we're not sure about operation. I haven't heard anything yet about the actual operation that day.
Yeah.
But the design itself is, I think, where a lot of people are going to hang their hat.
Yeah, gross negligence. So if the operators knew that it was even more risky than they had revealed or promised.
Correct.
Ted, we're going to leave it there for now. So great to see you. Thank you for your expertise. Ted Spaulding, appreciate it.
Thank you.